So, you've just finished your UCAT and you get handed this piece of paper full of numbers that's supposedly your UCAT score. But what does it mean? In this video, we're going to talk about UCAT scores. Keep listening if you want to find out why the same mark in different sections can give you different scores, which universities use a UCAT cutoff score, and why looking at previous year's results can make sure you're ahead of the curve this year. Hi everyone, my name's Jess from MedicMind and I'm a fourth year medical student at the University of Birmingham. If this is your first time here and you want to learn more about the UCAT, BMAT, medicine admissions and all that sort of stuff, don't forget to subscribe and hit the round bell so you don't miss anything. And keep watching to find out what is a good UCAT score. If you've already taken your UCAT and you have some top tips, let me know in the comments below. Let's get started with the video. I'll be honest, I wasn't entirely sure what my UCAT score meant on test day, and even after that, applying to medical schools, I wasn't entirely sure where it placed me in my year. But knowing if you have a good UCAT score means that you can apply tactically to universities. If you've done very well, you can start looking at universities that will weight this very highly in your application. And if you did less well, you can consider other med schools that will look at other parts of your application instead. So let's get into how the UCAT itself is scored. As you probably know, the UCAT is split into 5 sections. So for most of the sections, verbal reasoning, quantitative reasoning, abstract reasoning, and decision making, you'll get a score between 300 and 900, with 900 being the highest and 300 being the lowest. However, for the situational judgment part of the exam, you'll get a band between 1 and 4, with 4 being the highest scoring. So when you get your score on test day, it will be made up of 4 scores between 300 and 900, which can be added to give you a total out of 3,600, and there'll be a band between 1 and 4 for situational judgment. People will often talk about their UCAT average, and you get this by dividing your total score out of 3,600 by 4. And some universities even have UCAT average cutoff scores that will determine whether you're eligible to get an interview or not. Stick around till the end of the video when we'll talk a bit more about this. So let's talk a bit more about how your score is calculated for each section of the UCAT. If you want to learn a bit more about each section itself, take a look at the links below for the MedicMind website where we talk about how to score highly in each one. So for verbal reasoning, quantitative reasoning and abstract reasoning, each question is worth 1 mark. And then your total score is scaled to a mark between 300 and 900. But how much each mark will affect your score is determined by the number of questions in each section. So if a section has lots of questions, each mark is effectively worth less. Take a look at the MedicMind website to find out which sections are worth the most marks. For the decision-making section, the scoring is slightly different. Questions with 1 correct answer are worth 1 mark, whereas for multi-statement questions, they're worth 2 marks, and you can get 1 mark if you get it partially correct. Finally, in the situational judgment section, the range of raw scores is split into 4 bands, and this will determine your final result. You can get partial marks if you get an answer that's close to the correct one as well. Now we've had a look at each section in depth, let's look a bit more about what is a good UCAT score. Keep listening till the end and we'll talk a bit more about universities and how they use these scores as well. It can be quite hard to define what a good UCAT score is exactly, because scores vary year on year. However, as a general rule of thumb, you should aim for about 650 as your UCAT average score, as most students tend to score between 620 and 630. Anything above 680 can be considered a high score, so well done. In the situational judgment section, anything above band 2 is a good score, with band 1 being a very high score. At the end of the testing period, UCAT will publish the average results and also split the range of results for the year into deciles. This splits up everyone who took the test for that year into 10 groups. So if you're in the first decile, you're in the top 10% of people who took the test for that year. And if you're in the second decile, you're in the top 20% and so on. This sounds great until you realise that by the time they've released the deciles for your year, you'll probably have applied to the med schools that you've chosen. And that's why looking at UCAT scores from previous years will give you the best idea of where you'll be ranking. The difference between a top decile UCAT average score between 2018 and 2017 was only about 10 marks. So it doesn't actually vary that much, but there is some variation. So if your score wasn't within the top 3 deciles for last year, don't panic because it might have changed for the year that you took the test. There is some variability, so don't take previous year's scores as an exact guide, and there's no exact score you should be aiming for. You can check out the UCAT website for the statistics from previous years, including 2019, last year. After all that, you might be wondering if there's a specific UCAT score you should be aiming for just to get into medicine, and ultimately no, there isn't. This might seem frustrating because you're not really sure what you're aiming for, but it means that if you don't think your UCAT will be the strongest part of your application, you can apply strategically. Some UCAT scores will only use your UCAT to decide who comes to interview. So if you think you're doing quite well and you're blasting through those practice papers, have a look at those universities. If you know you have different strengths, take a look at universities that don't rank your UCAT as highly on your application. My final tip is to do your research. By putting in the work beforehand, you can approach your UCAT and your med school applications in general, knowing that you'll be letting your best strengths shine through. And that's what's most important. If you want to learn more ways to improve your personal statement, UCAT score, BMAT score, or anything like that, don't forget to subscribe and hit the round bell so you don't miss anything. If you found it useful, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and share it with a friend who might be taking the UCAT too. If you have any UCAT top tips, let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to check out the Medic Mind website for our UCAT online course. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.